Well, this all happens too often. What you need to do with any negotiation or communication with your landlord, or any contract in life really, is to make sure you take sound file notes. Certainly if it's a phone call, you should take some notes about that. But certainly if there's a meeting and you've discussed some specific points, you should write back to the landlord, certainly the leasing executive, and confirm those points each time. Well, I wouldn't just rely on the letter. We do have now in some states and territories, we've changed the legislation over the years so the landlord sends a reminder notice out to the lessee in relation to they have an option. But the critical point here is the lessee still has to take action and do it within a set parameter of timeframes to exercise that right. Remembering that a lessee's option is their right over the landlord's property. So don't rely on just that notice. They need to take some firm action. Look, that's a common myth. With relocation clauses where they appear in leases, the landlord can give you a notice to relocate your business to what's called similar or like premises. Certainly the legislation in each state and territory will advise you how the parties are to conduct themselves and how the outcomes are supposed to look with a relocation notice. But certainly they can't just put you anywhere. It has to be reasonable, and certainly you should get some advice along the way when a relocation notice comes up. Look, there's so many avenues here that it's a very wide and broad question, but certainly where the landlord, and each state and territory's legislation covers this, and certainly does the lease in most cases, but where the landlord or their agents have taken some action whereby they've interrupted the flow of traffic or the access to the premises or to your specific store, yes, you have a cause there to be seeking some form of compensation. Look, you should be compensated, and the acts are fairly specific there, that you'll be compensated to the value of your fit out. But as in relation to the compensation if your business is to close altogether, you certainly need to get some sound advice there. Your lease, if it addresses demolition clauses or if it's silent in that area, you may be out of pocket. So you need to seek some advice there, but certainly don't get your expectations too high, because you may only be compensated for the balance of the value of your fit out. Look, you are bound, you've entered into a contract. Although a retail shop lease is the most complex contract you'll possibly enter into, it does have a lot of dates and times and performance clauses in there that you must adhere to throughout the lease. And there is clauses, special conditions there on how you must conduct yourself throughout the term of the lease. So just to get your lease and say, I've signed it, set, forget, no, that's not the case. It is a living contract and you need to have a good understanding of it. Look, when there's been market rent reviews at an option, for instance, rents can go up or can go down. The issue of having what's called ratchet clauses, where rents can only go up and never go backwards, was outlawed with the introduction of retail shop lease legislation back in the 90s. But as far as rent renewals or lease renewals as such, rent can go up or can go down. You need to be well researched, you need to understand your numbers, and certainly negotiate to get those numbers right. Well, they are called the landlord for a reason. They can set the rent at anything they like. That's true. But it's up to you to negotiate, put time on your side and research your business to understand what is the appropriate rent to make sure that real estate is performing for your business, not you for it. But at the end of a lease, if a landlord sees fit, they want to double the rent, that's entirely up to them. And you must remember that your lease is always expiring, you need to plan towards it and obviously see if you can take the landlord outside that cycle. Look, a market rent review, normally that happens in this day and age around an option period, is where the parties can't agree, being the landlord and the lessee can't agree on what the rent should be for the new period or new lease term. Then they will ask for a specialist retail valuer to determine what their rent will be. They will go out to the market and they will assess what that rental should be. And you've got to bear in mind that both parties will be invited to put a submission to the valuer as to what they think the rent should be and why. So pretty critical to make sure you put that submission through to them. Look, the notice that you're entitled to under the law these days is 1 clear month's notice. Now, if you're within that period, then certainly you've got until the end of the following clear calendar month to vacate from those premises. But certainly if the landlord's given you that notice prior to, yes, the expiry date is the end of the lease. Your lease is always counting down. Look, all shopping centres leak somewhere. What you've got to look at there is that what's causing the leak. If it's a failure of the roof membrane, etc., it's a capital cost expenditure issue, then it's obviously the landlord's issue. But if it's certainly just one of those things where gutters are overflowing, etc., look, both parties are responsible here. You should be insured for everything from the bottom of your ceiling down, and we cover it for water damage and certainly industrial special risk events. But then the landlord is responsible too for water coming into premises as well. So what you'll find will be a subrogation of liability between the landlord's insurers and your own insurers. But don't rely on the landlord insuring your events. You need to have yourself insured. Look, many people ask us this, and particularly when they're in distress. When you're going to a landlord to say that you can't pay your rent, you can't meet your contractual obligations under the lease, it's only fair and reasonable that you share that data with them as to your capacity and the financial capacity of your business, because you're asking them to share that risk with you. So in doing that, I think it's the only fair that the landlord be informed, and it's a reasonable request from them. But certainly that information should remain confidential.